Let's start by looking at the word photosynthesis. You might notice it contains the word photo, which has to do with light. That's why originally we had the word photograph, and synthesis, which means to make something. So we're going to use light to make something. And this is the basis of the definition of photosynthesis that we have to learn. Photosynthesis is the way green plants. Now we have to have the word green in there because in order to carry out photosynthesis, plants have to have chlorophyll, which is a green color. So photosynthesis is the way green plants, and there you go, use light, photo, to make synthesis, their own food. Now, what is the role of photosynthesis? What is its function? What is the point of doing photosynthesis? Well, first of all, as it's rather obvious from the definition, is that photosynthesis makes food for plants. Photosynthesis, in a funny way, also makes food for animals because they eat the plants that carried out photosynthesis. Photosynthesis also makes oxygen. Watch this little trick. O for oxygen and O for out. That's why we will never get confused that oxygen is the gas that's given out in photosynthesis. Photosynthesis also had a role to play in making fossil fuels because fossil fuels are made from the remains of plants and animal materials from long ago. These plants originally carried out photosynthesis and the animals ate the plants that did photosynthesis, and over thousands and millions of years these dead plants and animals became fossil fuels. We might have seen this in the carbon cycle. In a nutshell, the role or the function of photosynthesis is that it plays a part in making food, making oxygen, making fossil fuels. It's on the make. Now, photosynthesis is actually a very complicated process and full of complicated chemical reactions, but we can represent it very simply by one simple chemical equation. This is the chemical equation to represent photosynthesis. We can see that in order to carry out photosynthesis, we have to have the raw ingredients, carbon dioxide and water. These two ingredients, along with having chlorophyll and sunlight, often called UV, we can then create food, which is glucose. This glucose is a sugar, it is a carbohydrate. For those of you who have done food, it is a monosaccharide. Its formula is C6H12O6, which sounds rather complicated. And we also make oxygen gas. Now, oxygen gas here is a waste. Don't forget, oxygen out. Photosynthesis. It is a waste, but it happens to be a useful waste, thank goodness, as we need it to breathe. Now, the chemists amongst us will realize that this is not balanced. Balancing equations means that you have the same number of atoms on the left-hand side as you have on the right. Because we're biologists, we needn't worry ourselves about the mechanics of this. We'll just keep in mind a little trick to keep this straight or to keep it balanced. Well, basically, we're going to give everybody a six-pack, so we will put a big 6 in front of the carbon dioxide. We will put a big 6 in front of the water. We won't put any 6 in front of the food, and we will put a big 6 in front of the oxygen gas. So we will give everybody going to the party a six-pack, but not the guy bringing the food. So the balanced equation for photosynthesis is 6 carbon dioxides, 6 waters, chlorophyll and sunlight, making glucose food, and 6 oxygens. You have to make sure that you put in these 6s in order to balance the equation. Looking looking at this, we might also realize that this is actually an energy conversion, where we are taking the solar energy or the sunlight and we are creating food, which is a store of chemical energy. So it is energy conversion. It's also crap. We're not going to say that too loud though. Why is it crap? Well, it is an anabolic reaction. You might remember that anabolic reactions involve taking simple chemicals like carbon dioxide and water, using energy, the sun's energy here, and creating complicated chemicals from them. Anabolic reactions, AP. Photosynthesis is an anabolic reaction. Catabolic reactions are taking complicated chemicals like food and breaking them down and releasing energy, and that was respiration. Crap. Shh. Now we have to know where the location of chlorophyll is within cells. Before we go there, people I know from experience often find this confusing. So let's look at the word chlorophyll. The word chlorophyll means the green colour or the green pigment in plants. I remember Phil with the green face, chlorophyll, because the chlorophyll is the green colour. It is kept in the chloroplasts, which are little structures or little organelles inside in cells. S in structure, S in chloroplasts. So the green colour, Phil with the green face, is the chlorophyll, and the chloroplasts are the structures where the chlorophyll is to be found. The chlorophyll is used to trap energy. Let's remind ourselves of the structure of a chloroplast that we might have met in the section on cells. When we're looking at chloroplasts, I always keep cream eggs in mind. You know the cream eggs with the tin foil on the outside, the layer of chocolate, and they're all full of goo? Well, I keep those in mind when I am looking at the structure of a chloroplast. The outer layer of a chloroplast, corresponding to the tin foil, is a smooth outer membrane. The next layer is a smooth inner membrane, corresponding to the layer of chocolate. Then it is filled with goo, and there are a number of interesting structures within this goo. The first interesting structure is what we call lamella or membranes. These membranes are like lengths of toilet paper, folded over on top of themselves. These folds are called grana, or singular granum, and it is inside in these folds that the chlorophyll is found. The chlorophyll is found between the folds in the granums, or the grana, to be grammatically correct. We also find starch grains in this goo. The starch grains here are coloured blue-black because they've been treated with iodine, and iodine turns blue-black in the presence of starch. We also have a loop or a circular little piece of DNA. Chloroplasts, along with mitochondria, are the only organelles that have their own DNA. And lastly, we have the stroma or the goo. Now we are particularly interested in the grana, which are the membrane folds containing the chlorophyll, and the stroma when we are talking about photosynthesis. And it is vital for us to understand these parts of the chloroplast, especially when life is going to get more complicated and we have to look at the process of photosynthesis. So it's worth our while remembering the structure of a chloroplast. This is what the chloroplast looks like under the microscope. How would you recognize it? Well, you can see the key feature of the granum or the grana. You can see the membranes that are like little sheets of toilet paper folded over on itself here, stretching out a bit further, folded over on itself again. We can also see the starch grains staining up dark here under the microscope, and another hint would be the overall oval shape. So in a nutshell, chloroplasts are structures found only in plant cells. They contain chlorophyll and they carry out photosynthesis. Now we have to identify the source of light for photosynthesis. Well, as we said in our equation and in our definition, the light normally comes from the sun. Artificial light can also be used. What is the source of the carbon dioxide for photosynthesis? Don't forget, carbon dioxide is one of our ingredients. Well, carbon dioxide comes from two sources. There is an internal source. It is made in the plant by respiration. So if we look into our little leaf, where we can see the cells that might be carrying out photosynthesis, perhaps this one here, then that cell will get the carbon dioxide, the ingredient that it needs, from its neighbours. So these neighbouring cells are making carbon dioxide in the process of respiration, and they will give it to this cell here that needs it for photosynthesis. Good neighbours make good friends. There is also an external source of carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide diffuses or travels into the leaf, in through the stomata, in through the stoma for the plural, which are little openings on the undersurface of the leaf, and the carbon dioxide will come in through the little stoma, in through the stomatas if you like, it doesn't really matter, flows and diffuses through the spaces inside in the leaves, making its way to the cells that need it for photosynthesis. So it's inside out. There's an internal source of carbon dioxide and there's an external source. Lastly, what is the source of water for photosynthesis? Don't forget, water is another ingredient. Well, the water is got from the soil. One of the functions of roots is to absorb water or suck up water from the soil. So the water will enter the plant roots and will travel up the stem, up the xylem pipes, up the vessels responsible for carrying water, and the water will make its way out into the leaves that are going to carry out photosynthesis for the plant.